Hi, folks. This is Darren and Trisha with My RV Works. Now, Trisha works with us in our office. She's a customer-facing side, and you guys know me from being the guy in the field fixing stuff. So recently, we did a water heater R&R, remove and reinstall, or repair and replace, or whatever R&R stands for with respect to what it is that you did. But R&R is pretty much what we say. So we did what was it? A water heater.
Water heater.
R&R.
R&R. We replaced it.
We replaced it. Took out a bad one, put a new one in, and it was an older water heater we took out, and the newer water heater we put in. Out of that video, there were some comments that people had asked, and so what we decided to do was kind of collate those together. Trisha's got some questions that she's going to be the voice of the questioner person, and I'll do my best to not look stupid and give a best answer I possibly can. Okay, so that's the nature of the video. So let's see what we got. This is regarding water heater best practices. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to read the questions off of our list, and so we'll start with our first question. Did you put a check valve in on this install? I'm a tech in Florida, and I tend not to use them. What is your opinion? And then he adds some kind of comments.
Okay, thank you. Check valves. You will find a check valve on a water heater. That has to do with the bypass feature. So on your water heaters, there's a lot of different ways to create a bypass for a water heater. And now let's be clear, a check valve only allows water to flow in one direction. Okay, so it's only going to go one way, not the other. So that's what a check valve does. It only allows water to go in one direction. And if you have a bypass valve, where you have the three valves, one coming out of the water heater top port, which is hot, one coming into the water heater cold port bottom, and one in the middle, then you would not need a check valve. But some manufacturers will just have one valve denying the water from going into the cold port of the water heater, and that's the only valve they have, and then that check valve basically kind of like automatically prevents the hot water from going back in. So use of the check valve is dependent on the type of bypass system that they have used. Okay, if they don't have the three valve bypass system, they don't have that, then you do need a check valve to prevent the water from siphoning back into the water heater. Okay, another purpose of the check valve is, let's say you're taking a shower and you turn off the water. Let's say you're trying to take a military shower. These are the ones where you only have so many gallons of water and you just want to get in, get wet, turn the water off, lather yourself up, turn the water on, and rinse yourself off. A check valve could be useful there just to try to keep that water in the line, the hot water in the line. If you do not have a check valve and you do your military shower, you turn off all your water, then all the water is going to drain back in the water heater and you might waste more water getting it hot again to get to you. So I will put a check valve in a water heater if it already has one, but I would not put one in if it didn't have one.
Okay.
And it had the bypass valve with the three knobs. Hope that made sense.
Yeah, great. Okay, so question 2. So glad to watch this video. I'll be replacing my 1993 water heater this summer. My current one works, but I'm hoping to go with a tankless option so I can extend my shower time. Do you have any suggestions on brand and BTU? Have you done any of this kind of upgrade?
Yes, we've done quite a few of those. Recommendations on brands and BTUs. Let's first understand that if you're going to put an on-demand water heater in, you will lose the ability to heat your water on electricity. Some people don't realize that. They think they can put an on-demand water heater in and everything's fine. The other thing that I will mention on on-demand water heaters is the kind that you would put on a residential house may not work in an RV, because these water heaters, these on-demand water heaters that work on electricity, require a tremendous amount of electricity in order to get that heating element to the temperature it needs to get to heat your water in such a short space. Okay, so a lot of your RVs only have like a 14 gauge wire, maybe a 12 gauge wire, and some of them are only connected to 30 amps max. And so you have to look at your electrical requirements for this on-demand water heater if you're going with an electric option. Overwhelmingly, the on-demand water heaters that are designed for RVs are going to be running on propane. Okay, a best practice, and I'm going to get into your question here, but a best practice on the on-demand water heaters, they do consume a tremendous amount of LP while they're running. And so a best practice for us is when we do the install to put an on-demand water heater in a customer's RV, we also will put on a high demand gas regulator the LP regulator on the front, we will put on a high flow regulator, so that if your furnace is running, your stove was on, and your water heater turned on, all these types of things, there is enough BTUs in your LP system to provide all of the requirements that it needs. There is a math equation you can go through to determine if you need a high flow or your standard flow is fine. But just going eyes wide open, we've done several installs. Actually, we've been called in because the customer put in their own water heater and they were having issues with it. And it turns out that all we had to do was put on a high flow LP regulator, and that fixed the problem. The water heater was starving for LP pressure. Okay, so now that we've established that about the on-demand water heater, do I have a recommended brand? I hesitate to say this guy's better than that guy's better than this guy, Ford, Chevy, Dodge, Toyota. I don't really like getting into that. Having said that, if you're only interested in just hot water and you don't need all bells and whistles, all that kind of stuff, Suburban makes a really nice one. Okay, the thing I like about the Suburban is, as a technician, it's easy to work on, and a lot of the parts that I usually stock for a standard water heater, not all of them, but a lot of the parts I stock for a standard water heater will work on the Suburban Nautilus water heater. Whereas Truma, Girard, Precision Temp, oh boy, there's like 10 of them out there. And you don't have to just stay with the RV industry. You can go over to the marine industry as well, because the marine, not marine like that, but for yachts and marines and stuff and RVs, a lot of those water heaters kind of parlay back and forth to each other. Like Precision Temp, for example, is really geared towards yachts, but we see those on RVs as well. So look at your bells and whistles, your features and benefits. Some of them have adjustable features. Some of them can take colder temperatures and hotter temperatures and all that kind of stuff. I just want a long hot shower. So I'm looking for a Ford, not a BMW, okay? Or a Chevy, not a, you know what I'm trying to say. So that's up to you on your features and benefits. We put in a lot more of the Suburban Nautiluses than the Trumas and the Girards. And that's a pretty common thing for us to do. And a lot of people, they're okay with just a switch on the inside, turn it on, turn it off. But then that has an upgrade with a little display, and you can see the temperature and all that kind of stuff, if that's important to you. As far as BTUs, that's a function of where you live and how cold the water is as it's entering into your RV. If you've got a hose that's laying on some concrete and it's coming into the RV and it's like cold outside, that means the water's coming into the RV in the upper 30s or 40 degrees, and you want to have the water at like 105, then you're going to take 40 degree water, you got to get it to 105, and so you have to ask yourself the question, how quickly can that water heater, it's called the delta, from input to output, that's a little triangular Greek delta symbol, is the change from in to out. So those would be the numbers you're looking at there. Some on-demand water heaters have a more effective delta than others, but if you're in the wintertime and your water heater is getting very cold water, that water may not be in that manifold long enough to actually make it be 105 or 110 or 130 that you're wanting. And so that's going to go back to your features and benefits. So as far as BTUs and what brand, that's up to you and your features and benefits, and a really slick sales guy that might pitch you on different features. We put in a lot more of the Suburban Nautiluses than any of the other features, but we work on all of them. We did one on a Precision Temp, and because the electrode was grounded. That one was a video we came up with. And anyway, so that's my answer on that one.
Great.
All right.
Okay, so our next question is actually 4 questions, but we'll take them just one at a time.
Okay.
So first, how did the new door work out? Good fit?
If you get the right door kit, yes, it's a good fit. The door, okay, so on that one, it was on this water heater R&R, it was a tank. We took a tank water heater out and we put a tank water heater back in. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we took out an Atwood and we put in a Dometic. Basically, Dometic bought Atwood around 2014, and so all the Atwood water heaters became Dometic water heaters. And they redesigned some things. And some of the things that they redesigned we love. Thank you very much for putting the electric heating element on the front instead of the back. Huge, thank you. That was a terrible, terrible, terrible design on the old Atwoods, where the heating element was in the back side. That was just terrible. But so the new ones have it on the front. There are other things that change on the water heater. Most of your dimensions are okay, but the water heater is narrower, and so you need to ask the question on what was in that hole. What are you taking out before you put the new one in? And so then you get the right door kit that goes with that. But it fits fine once you get the right door kit.
Okay.
It's really easy.
Okay, so then this person asks, how did you modify the gas line? Did you cautiously bend it by hand?
No. I have the actual little tubing bender tool,
Okay.
which I would recommend. And there are 3 different, I don't know if the word is gauge of copper tubing. I don't think gauge is a right. It's letters, M and there's different letters of copper tubing, and it has to do with the thickness of the wall. If you are unfortunate enough to get the really thin walled copper tubing, careful. That stuff kinks really easily. It's very thin. I don't like it. But having said that, I've got that fancy tubing bender that you put your tube in it and you bend it. And even as gentle and careful as I am, if you've got the copper tubing, I don't remember if it's an L, okay. Anyway, it's the thin tube copper tubing. I would never, ever, ever bend copper tubing with my hand. It's just, there's not enough surface area where you have to actually bend that. So on that water heater there, the gas line does have a little bit more of a dog leg to it because they change where the gas valve comes in at. And so you do need to bend that tubing. So there's a couple different tubing benders out there. One, you put your tube in a spring. The challenge I have with that is you can't get your spring on it if you've got your flare nut on the end. So I've got the spring kit, but I can never use it because I can't get it on the tube. So I get the tubing bender and bend it, and it's just a slight little bend, but that's how I bend my tubes with the tubing bender.
All right. Okay, so the next question, question number 5. I noticed my RV water line seems thinner walled than standard PEX tubing. I've had great results using the pinch clamp tool on existing RV fittings. In your video, you modified water lines with plastic fittings. Are they standard fittings normally used with PEX tubing or different / designed for use with pinch clamps?
Okay, the fittings that I use overwhelmingly in all of my plumbing work is going to be, they're called C-Tech, and just in the last quarter, I think they changed the term C-Tech to Aqua Lock. Okay, so Aqua Lock or C-Tech fittings, these are plastic fittings, very much like a shark bite. If you're familiar with Home Depot and Lowe's, the shark bite fittings, this is the same thing. You push them in, there's a little collar where you can disassemble. I use those overwhelmingly, first of all, because they're really easy to use. And sometimes you're in some really awkward situations. You got to get your arm in something, and I don't have enough room to put the tool on you're talking about to squeeze those ring clamps. Even though I do have the ring clamp tool where you can get it from the side or the front, but sometimes just getting in there where I can just push them 2 together. The C-Tech or the Aqua Lock, same exact tool, they just did a brand name change. I've got those in my shop running compressed air. So they're rated, I think, to 350 PSI, if not more. And in your RV, you're only ever going to be exposing those to like 50 PSI or 60 maybe. So they're way overkill for what we need in there. So I am a big fan of the Aqua Lock or C-Tech fittings. They also have the Flare It fittings, which are the white ones with all little curling knuckles on them and everything. But even those, you have to have a special little ratchet tool with a tooth on it to tighten them. And then you have to have another tool to fit into it to expand it when you put it on the thing. So I'm looking for something where I can cut my PEX line and make a connection. And to me, that's the Aqua Lock, push to lock kind of fitting like a shark bite. No problems with those at all. I've been using those for years, and like I said, I even used them on the my compressed air line. I took PEX tubing and the Aqua Lock fittings all throughout my shop, and I've got compressed air running throughout the whole shop at 150 PSI, I believe, and they're doing fine. But they're rated for all that, so you're good.
All right, great. Okay, and our final question from this viewer in question number 6, you've kind of touched on it a little bit already.
Okay.
But asks, did you consider tankless or on-demand models when you were doing this?
That decision's up to the customer, and this customer has access to electricity, and they just kind of wanted to be able to heat their water with electricity. Mm-hmm. And so that wasn't a decision for me to make. That was a decision for the customer to make, and they hire us to install what they decide. And so Trisha's right. I did kind of talk about that, the pros and cons of tankless versus not tankless. In that instance, she was just a single lady. I don't think she's going to take long showers or has a family of people that has to take a bunch of showers. So it worked perfectly for her. So like the idea of a tankless water heater has a wonderful perception where it's like I can take a million year shower and never run out of water, but tankless water heaters do have some issues. We alluded to earlier on if they're starving for propane, or how cold the water is coming in. So the other thing with a tankless versus a tank, if I'm boondocking or something like that, I have 6, 10, 12 gallons of water that is hot right there, and I don't have to have anything. It can stay hot for a while. And whereas with the on-demand water heater, I only have hot water if I have battery power to run the brain, if I have propane, enough vapor pressure in my tank in order to make that work. And so the perception of the on-demand water heater sounds wonderful, but from my experience working on these things, they do have some other issues. With a tank water heater, hey man, if your gas is out, flip a switch, you're on electric. You can work that way. So you have two options. Plus with the tank, you do have like a battery of hot water right there that you can use as you need it. The only negative to a tank water heater is it does take a while to get it heated back up again. I can speak to that. We full-timed for 15 years, and it was my wife and myself, and we had 2 kids, and so there was 4 of us taking showers. We finally bought a house and put the kids in their own bedroom and everything, but for the longest time we had was a toy hauler, and my son lived in his loft area, my daughter lived down below, and I mean these are like from birth up to about 10 or 11 years old. So they're kids. Let them do whatever they want. It's no big deal. But as they approach teenage years, they're like, okay, we need to change some things. But it was never a problem for 4 of us to get up in the morning, take showers, go to church, whatever. You could just flip on the electric and the propane at the same time, and you've got you have a heating element heating the water, and you have a propane flame heating the water. And we didn't really have a problem, but it was a 12-gallon water heater, and it kept up with us. It did. Plus we did dishes. So strangely enough, now that we have a house, if the kids are going to wash dishes at night in the house and we're going to take showers, we seem to run out of hot water in the house more than we ever did in the RV with a 12-gallon water heater.
Well, the kids are teenagers now too.
That's true. A long 20. So anyway, the idea of an on-demand water heater is great, but it's not the end-all be-all. There does have some issues with it. So everybody needs to go in there with eyes wide open and look at features and benefits, pros and cons on both sides. It's not the wonderful thing that everybody claims it to be.
Or at least across the board, it's not like everything about it is plus.
It doesn't check
plus.
every box for everybody. I'm glad that product exists. I'm glad that they came out with that for RVs, but it's not the answer for every single situation out there.
Gotcha.
So that's my answer on that.
Okay, so question number 7.
7, okay.
Says, thanks for the video. I somehow forgot to drain my water heater when I winterized, so now he needs to replace it.
Okay.
Thankfully replacing the same with the same model.
Okay, yeah.
So the water lines should line up the same. Do you use Teflon tape for the water lines? Just trying to make sure I have everything when I go to replace it.
Okay. If you're dealing with the male or the female pipe thread, National Pipe Thread, NTP, and you're screwing a NTP thread into another NTP thread, yes, you would use Teflon. The rule of thumb there is 3 wraps, and you skip the first tooth of the thread, the first thread. 3 wraps. I use paste typically, but I could go either with the tape or the paste. I like the paste. In my mind, paste just helps lubricate the threads as it's going on. So that's if you're going to go NTP thread to NTP thread. So that would be the back of your water heater, the stubs that stick out, and you're going to put that male. Now, if you're going to, like on our job, you may have seen, and I pointed this out on that video, with the new Domestics, they not only changed the gender of those fittings, male to female, but they also changed the orientation. So you do need to, and I mentioned that in that video. Now, if you're going to be connecting, earlier I was talking about the C-Tech fittings or even the Flaret fittings or anything like that. If you look inside and it's got this little gaskety donut thing on the inside, those you do not need to use any Teflon for, because that little compression donut thing on the inside, that will seal the pipe, making it watertight. So, and it's designed to be compressed there. So if you have the kind of fitting that has that little, normally they're white or black, little cone-shaped rubber gasket inside the fitting, there's no point in all in putting Teflon on. It's worthless. It's not going to do anything. So pipe to pipe, yes. Fitting to pipe, probably not if it's got the a gaskety donut thing. I'm having a hard time trying to think of what that thing's called. But you look inside. If it's got it, you don't need the Teflon. So there you go.
Okay. Okay, question number 8. Could you have used a dishwasher flexible tubing for the hot and cold hookup? One with metal reinforced braid?
You could. It's blatant overkill. You're never going to see more than 40 to 50 psi of pressure, and the water is going to be rated at 140 degrees. So it might look nice, but you gain nothing by investing in a braided hose. You could use it, but you can, but you don't need that.
Gotcha.
You're not going to have the pressure that those are spec'd for, and you're not going to have the temperature that those are spec'd for. We use plastic PEX line. I've been using it for years, and plastic fittings, and it works great. But if you need that flexibility, we've even seen where they'll take a garden hose. Like if you go to a new RV and you look on the back, sometimes I say it's garden hose, but it's the garden hose material, and it's usually white with little reinforced braiding in it. They use that, put little, I don't know that I'd use hose clamps. They use the crimp seal kind, the little crimps with this, or crimps to crimp it on, and that works just fine too. So you could be fancy and use those braided hoses, but I don't think it's necessary.
Okay, question 9. We are nearing the end.
Yay, okay.
All right.
I can get to watch more of my videos now. Okay.
If I'm replacing a Dometic with a Dometic, so same
Okay.
model to model, do all the plumbing connections stay the same, or do I need to go by L's, etc.?
Yes and no. In that video, we went from an Atwood to a Dometic, and like I just said, they changed the gender, they changed the location of the fittings, okay? So in that instance, you might need to buy some L's, and if it's like we did in our video, you need to go from male to a female or a female to male, whatever, you got to look at that. In the video, I did touch up on those fittings there. But if you're gonna, like if I was, not too long ago, I didn't make a video of it because it was pouring down rain, but we had to swap out another water heater. So like a year ago, we put a water heater in for a customer, and they let it freeze. And so we had the opportunity to go right back and put in another water heater, same thing. So all the fittings were exactly the same. It was unfortunate that they never winterized their RV, and so they had to buy a whole nother tank. And so in that instance, the fittings just stay, and you just unscrew them, take the thing out, put the new one in, screw it back on.
Yeah. So a couple plugs here: winterize your RV.
Winterize your RV.
And we have a video on that.
Yeah, and so winterize and drain your water heater in the winter would be the key. Yeah. I actually have a few frozen water heaters that I collected, and I'll be using those in a slice and dice video I have coming up.
Oh, all right.
I've already I already sliced open an Atwood and a Suburban water heater in our playlist. You can see those. And I want to get a video where I take my borescope and stick it inside. I'm trying to figure out how to get it and run it with no water and turn it on electric, because what they say is that if you run your water heater on electric with no water in it, then it'll burn up the heating element within seconds. Okay. I've never said that. I don't know that that's the truth. I know it's not healthy to run your water heater without a heating element. I know that's the fact. But I want to try to get my borescope in there to kind of see that with a timer.
Just like Mythbusters.
Exactly. Yeah. The water heater that I cut in half, it had a heating element in it, and I let it run. But the thing is there was no tank, because I had cut the back of the tank off. And it just glowed for like a half hour. I had the camera sitting there. I'm like, it's not burning up. Well, because it's exposed to the outside air. So I need to do it in a tank where it can get pressure and heat and then see. But I'll just that's why I've been collecting these things, so I can play with them.
All right.
So.
Okay, so we have the final question.
Ooh, bonus round.
Question
Okay,
number 10. Okay. And these are kind of two questions we're going to put into one. Oh. So what was the door replacement that you used? I need a new water heater, but the new heaters are all square and my opening is rectangle. Okay. And do you have the door kit part number with side panels?
Okay. Yes. So for the door kit, when you order your water heater, you're going to need to know what you're taking out. Was it an Atwood? Was it a Suburban? Because one of them's more square, one of them's more rectangle. And so when you look at your part numbers, I think there's white and black, but then I think within the white and black, you have the Atwood 6 gallon, the Atwood 10 to 12 gallon, and then the Suburban 6 gallon, the Suburban 10 to 12 gallon. And so I think what we'll do, I have all those part numbers. So down in the description, I think what we'll do, so if this is a question you have, go down in the description and we'll list, you know, the door kit numbers.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
And so did that answer both of them?
Yeah, I think that answered
okay.
everything.
So down below we'll give you the thing, because I just know that when we order water heaters for customers, we do need to know what they had in it. And then I go to my little chart, which I'll share down below, on what the door kit part number is.
So we'll put the list down below, including the one that we used in the video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All
And they
right.
work great. It's easy. You got to build it. It comes with little, I remember the first time I got one, I'm like, because I've done water heater jobs in the day where we had to scab pieces of 2x4. I think it was an Atwood we took out and a Suburban we put in or something. We had to cut the hole bigger. I remember this nightmare job. I'm in the field trying to figure this out. And we found some plywood laying around and we had to cut it and fit it in there just to make the water heater fit. And it was terrible. And so I was real nervous when we had to do, now I know what to look for, but the first time I got my first Dometic to swap out, the water heater is much smaller than the opening. And I'm like, they say it's going to fit. And I'm stressing, thinking, okay, we got to start looking for a piece of plywood or a 2x4 or something. And so biting the bullet, I'm opening the little skinny box for the door kit. I'm like, that door's huge. Oh, look at these little side plates. Oh, they go on the side of the water heater. Oh, so they figured it out. So even though the water heater is going to be physically smaller and you have this space on both sides, there's these little wings that you attach to the water heater that makes it the right size so your door will fit. So don't have to get the 2x4s to make it square itself up. Yeah, that was a nightmare job. And that's what we run into in the field. You're out literally in the field playing MacGyver, trying to figure out how to do these things. And you feel 10 foot tall and bulletproof and you're like, yeah, I figured that one out, but you don't always win them. So yeah, it's kind of fun.
All right, well, that's all the questions that we have today.
Well, good. And if you guys like this format where we go through some of the comments and answer them, I'm okay with that. I could do this a lot. And so if you like this format, just let us know. Leave a comment. Say, hey, we like this format, or you're wasting our time. Something along those lines. I've got so much in here that I want to share, and so sometimes these trigger like post-traumatic stress on like the water heater job, and sometimes I'm like, well, I could add value to you, like the on-demand water heater needing to upgrade the LP regulator. All kinds of tips sprinkled in here. So if this adds value to you, let us know, and we'll keep doing more of them.
Yeah,
All right?
and the main way that we know whether or not you found a video to be helpful is, number one, if you watched it. And if you watch it all the way through. And number two, if you like it, that's another great way for us to know.
Share it with friends.
So, all of that. So, all right. I guess till the next video.
Happy camper, say my river works, and we got a happy water heater, which makes a happy camper. All right, guys.
And definitely in the wintertime.
Yes, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. See you on the next video. Thanks for watching. Bye.